Welcome to Close Listening. I'm Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by silent co-host Ludwig von B. And today the album I'm going to be reacting to, reviewing, however you want to frame it, is Peter Gabriel's So. I guess I've done a Peter Gabriel review on this channel before, in the sense that I listened to Genesis's Selling England by the Pound. And as far as prog rock, more experimental songwriting goes, that was more to my taste compared to other things in that genre. But, generally I like music where there's a high ratio of lyrics to the underlying melody. And the way that I explain this is that we socially construct the meaning of music. So, little bits of it, can invoke feelings. But if you just have too much music, it's just too arbitrary what it all means, and eventually just sounds like repetition, and it sounds like the singer didn't come up with a full idea, which is what you express in words, because words have specificity, music does not. So I tried getting an album out of the library called Peter Gabriel. The problem is Peter Gabriel has 4 albums, or at least 4 albums called Peter Gabriel. When he left Genesis, he called all of his solo albums just that, for whatever reason. So I thought I was getting the one that has one of his famous popular tunes on it, Salisbury Hill. I ended up getting a different one. Now, this other one had the song Biko on it, which is an important historical protest song about apartheid in South Africa. But, that's a very somber and simply structured song, perhaps a bit too simple for my tastes. And then a lot of the other songs on the record, even if they weren't too prog, it just felt like he was experimenting more with 80s sound effects than he was creating the nicest music to listen to. But So, which I believe is his most successful record, is also an example of a record where he sticks to that more conventional formula of having a pretty high ratio of lyrics to instrumentals. And once I started listening to this record, I knew I had found the right Peter Gabriel for me. So track 1 is called Red Rain, and right away Gabriel strikes me as having this very weathered voice. It kind of reminds me of late Rod Stewart, and it's not weathered in a bad way, but it does imply an older singer than Peter Gabriel was. I guess he just has this natural sound of a wisdom of age, even before he was very high up in age. Sound-wise, it kind of reminds me of the stuff that Phil Collins, his Genesis bandmate, was doing in the 80s. Drums that sound vaguely like In the Air Tonight, but unlike In the Air Tonight, where it feels like that drum riff is the selling point, this is just an overall rich, powerful melody. What I got out of it is just there's this overwhelming presence of social injustices, and Gabriel clearly considers himself as a kind of singer-songwriter who wants to take them seriously, but where do you begin, and what possibly can you do? The lyrics go, and I can't watch anymore, no more denial, it's so hard to lay down in all of this, red rain, coming down, and later, I'm bathing in red rain coming down. Track 2 is another of the Peter Gabriel pop standards, up there with Salisbury Hill. This one is called Sledgehammer, and lyrically it might be the least reflective of the songs. It's kind of like James Taylor's Steamroller, in that it's just like, I'm a real cool lover, and it's just using silly metaphors to express that. But even if the song isn't as deep lyrically as some of the others, the music is still really innovative, and even if it feels like an 80s factory product, it's like the most creative 80s factory product you're going to hear. He starts with a shakuhachi flute, creating this mysterious sound that doesn't sound like a lot of other songs, and then you get the big drums, and then you get the horns, and it starts to sound more 80s, but the lyrics, if you're not reading them closely, they sound kind of mysterious. Like, what does he mean when he says he's a sledgehammer? And even though horns are quite a cliche in this kind of 80s songs, I think the way they're used to back up the chords along the way, not just for that big accent blow, that also contributes to a unique sound. So Sledgehammer is a really distinct sounding song. It's a real classic of the era. You should absolutely check it out. The one thing I noticed lyrically, there's a part where Peter Gabriel goes, I've kicked the habit, shed my skin, this is the new stuff, I go dancing, we go dancing in. It's almost saying, okay, maybe not everything I have to do has to be profound or too experimental. It's okay to write a pop song, and this is a darn good one. Track number 3 is called Don't Give Up. The first thing that stood out to me is this line, "No one wants you when you lose." So it's this very defeated song. It has a very strong backing vocalist, and I guess it's not really a backing vocalist, it's a duet. It turns out to be Kate Bush, who is someone I really have to listen to, and I haven't had the opportunity to. Supposedly, this was inspired by a Dorothea Lange photo, I believe, from the Great Depression in America called Migrant Mother, and it was also inspired by Thatcher's austerity. That said, like a lot of good protest songs, it's not just a list of facts, and it's kind of timeless. One thing I thought is maybe it's an exploration, because you have this duet between Gabriel and Bush, of how gender might frame how you react to austerity. So he sings, "We were wanted all along. I was taught to fight, taught to win. I never thought I could fall." So, I often hear this rhetoric, especially around American politics, how, people used to have good jobs, used to be, if you worked hard, you succeeded. So the sort of, yeah, I used to be a quasi-capitalist. I believed in the system. I believe hard work was the key to success. And now I feel ashamed that you realize it's not. Whereas Kate Bush is singing, it's okay, don't give up, we believe in you. So I guess there are two ways you could feel the pain of poverty. One is the shame of thinking this wasn't supposed to happen to me, and one is, well, it doesn't matter who it's supposed to happen to, it's very painful, and we have to stand by each other and support one another through this process. Track 4 is called That Voice Again. Here the lyrics strike me as having a kind of worried sound. It has softer instrumentation. One part that really stood out to me is where he says, "Listen to the wind," and then right after that there's an instrumental, but it's not like a blazing guitar solo. The instrumental is almost just a continuation of the musical textures you heard earlier. So it really is like listening to the wind. You're not hearing something very detailed and fancy, you're just stepping back to appreciate the background. Track 5 is called Mercy Street. Listening to this, I just noticed it was very calm. It had a constant beat underlying it. It used these occasional simple flute riffs, and it has this atmosphere of relaxation to it. Now, it's actually based on a poem by Anne Sexton, who's a iconic Boston poet who died by suicide. I just say that because that, of course, contributes to how people are iconicized. Listening just to the Gabriel song, you just might think it's about the idea of mercy, looking for calm. But with the Anne Sexton poem, that's almost a secondary consideration. It's referring to this street, presumably in Boston, and definitely somewhere in New England based on the way you read it. And it's about this lost nostalgia for this place and being frustrated that she's in so much pain and can't find it anymore. And obviously it helps that the street is called Mercy, but it almost doesn't have to be. Mercy historically would have been a name of Puritan women in early colonial Boston, so it just has this association with the place and it isn't all about literal mercy. So here's the passage from Anne Sexton's poem I found most affecting. "I open my pocketbook as women do, and fish swim back and forth between the dollars and the lipstick. I pick them out, one by one, and throw them at the street signs, and shoot my pocketbook into the Charles River." So as you can see, she's very into promoting this imagery of the coast, of being in Boston and New England. She makes reference to the fish swimming around. And when she throws her lipstick at the street sign, I suppose you could say she's taking a pot shot at the word mercy for not really being there. But there's far more to the feeling of this than just the simple concept of mercy. Now, by contrast, the Peter Gabriel song, which is in tribute to Anne Sexton, he says, "Pulling out the papers from the drawers that slide smooth, tucking at the darkness, word upon word, confessing all the secret things in the warm velvet box. To the priest, he's the doctor. He can handle the shocks." So Anne Sexton's poem really emphasizes her nostalgia, the things she misses about New England, whereas if you look just at the Gabriel lyrics, they're more about the search for mercy and the darkness she experiences. So she talks about her darkness by talking about what's not there anymore, whereas Gabriel's song just more has a general air of darkness to it. Track number 6 is called Big Time. It starts with a voice saying hard there. This one kind of like a Sledgehammer filled with like 80s commercial trends. The one thing is Gabriel, with that voice, that prematurely aged voice you hear on Red Rain, can make the lyrics very expressive, like when he sings so much larger than life. And this song just uses really simple words in a punchy way. Sometimes, it just sounds silly, 80s commercial, but sometimes the contrast is kind of nice. He sings, "That place I come from is a small town. They think so small, they use small words." And I think the idea of singing about a small town while singing a song that sounds like it would be played in a suburban or urban 1980s mall, it's just kind of an awkward or interesting juxtaposition. There's also a reference to praying in the big church. So this song really likes the word big, kind of like Donald Trump saying bigly. But he goes back and forth between a sort of more urban poppy aesthetic and, I live in a small town, kind of Americana, or I don't know if you can say Britannicana aesthetic, Peter Gabriel being English. Track 7 on the record is We Do What We're Told. This one has a nice soft keyboard sound to contrast with Big Time. The kind of synthy sound of it gives me an alien invasion feel. Gabriel's backup singers start very slowly, and when they come in, their words are very affecting. Now, they're a bit too simple to be profound. It's things like one word, one truth, one dream, but just the way it's delivered is very dramatically successful. Track number 8 is called This Is the Picture. So I guess 7 and 8 are the more classically Gabriel experimental parts, but I like it more than what I've heard before because there's a softness to them. When I listened to that previous eponymous album, the drum machines on some of these experimental tracks were so loud it was just giving me a headache, whereas here it's just sort of eerie or calming depending on what kind of mood you're in. So this track 8, This Is the Picture, it has these weird chants in it, sitting by the window, watching the snow. So it creates this surreal experience, especially when several people are narrating their mundane instructions together. Now, finally, you get to track 9, which I suppose is the other reason besides Sledgehammer that cued me into checking out the rest of this album. It's called In Your Eyes. The production on it is just so perfect. So there's this part where this keyboard that sounds kind of like a harpsichord comes in, and on the one hand it has this biting sound, so it contrasts with the very soft sound you heard earlier, but it's not so biting, it's grating. It's just that the balance on this song is so perfect. And supposedly this was inspired by hearing songs, I don't remember in what country, but on one of his visits to Africa, and hearing about this local idea of truly mixing prayer and love song and making it ambiguous, what your goal really is. And as a result, you get this really profound sounding song where you're singing with the passion of someone in love, or the passion of someone singing to God if you're a religious person. But if you're not a religious person, the power of channeling that religious energy into your romantic energy, it just creates something mysterious and wonderful. And needless to say, this is my favorite track on the record, and it's also one of the most classic Peter Gabriel songs of all time. So, In Your Eyes. Anyway, check it out. So, had a good time listening to Peter Gabriel. So, you don't have to love every song by a famous artist. I have to keep telling myself that. It's okay you don't love Pink Floyd as much as those angry commenters on your Animals video say you happen to. But just like it was a pleasant surprise for me when I found The Wall, or I reappreciated some of the songs on Dark Side of the Moon, I was glad to find the Peter Gabriel album that really clicked with me. I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.